Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. It's been a while, so before we get into the interview, I want to tell you what I've been up to. Some of you may know that I started Turning Point in December of 2020. We were about, 8 months into the pandemic at that point. And I had this idea for a podcast for a long time. I thought about the name. I thought about the kind of stories I wanted to tell. But during that 2020, I really had a lot of free time on my hands, as many of us did. And I decided this was the right time to create a platform for these inspiring and diverse stories. I really had no plan other than I really want to do this. It's a passion project, so I'm just going to figure out how to do it. And I did. And I have been enjoying every minute of it. Over the last year or so, I've started to think more about what else can I do with this concept of storytelling and turning points? And that led me to create a workshop called Discover Your Story. Because through my time in television and my time in the corporate world, I've really realized that our stories are what set us apart. They're what help us get jobs and help us make an impact in networking situations. But most people don't know how to tell their story or don't even know what parts of it are impactful and relevant. So this workshop was really aimed at helping people discover the most impactful parts of their stories, figure out the life lessons they've learned from those moments, and then learn how they can use those stories to help themselves in networking situations, in interviews, for example, and how you can help others by sharing these stories in mentorship situations, for example. So I really became very passionate about doing this work. And now I've created a course. So this course is for high performing women who are struggling to get to the next step in their career. So whether that's a new career, whether that's building out your network, whether it's getting another job or a raise or promotion, so much of that ties back to being able to tell your story and share your story in a compelling way. So in this 6-week course, and it is virtual, but live. So there are live sessions. Everyone will join 6 sessions starting October 17th. And in each session, we're going to work through a different piece of this puzzle. So we're going to start with deep discovery, figuring out the most impactful turning points in your life and the life lessons you've learned from them. And then as we move through the course, you'll perfect the art of storytelling and also creating opportunities to tell these stories. So I'm really excited about it. My goal is for everyone to leave feeling more confident in their story, being very comfortable telling different parts of their story in social situations or work-related situations, and really being able to unlock professional opportunities using their stories. So if you have any questions, you want more information, you can visit my website. The link is in the show notes. Also, you can send me a direct message on Instagram, of course, anytime as well. All right, that's my opening spiel. Let's get to today's episode, shall we? So today you are going to meet Mike Shoreman. Mike is a good friend of mine. He's also one of the most inspiring people I know. In 2022, Mike became the first person with a disability to cross all 5 Great Lakes on a paddleboard. His journey is the subject of a new documentary, When Hope Breaks Through. It's making its debut at film festivals around the world. And his biggest turning point actually came after a devastating diagnosis that led to Mike having a mental health breakdown. It's also the reason he does all of the advocacy work he does today. We're going to hear his whole story in today's episode. Thanks so much for being here, Mike.
Oh, so great to be here with you. Can't wait to have this conversation and chat.
Yes, I've really been looking forward to it. I think we need to start with paddleboarding because I actually had my first experience on a paddleboard thanks to you. Obviously, you're an amazing instructor. We had this beautiful night. The water was flat and perfect. I had a great first experience. I didn't fall in, but I know.
You did so
yeah,
good.
I know. Oh, thank you. I feel like conditions were perfect. You like literally prepared Duncan and I so well. But I remember on, as we were paddling, I asked you about your first experience on a paddleboard, and it was very different. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, so no, well, thank you for that. No, I try to make sure that whoever I'm out there with is kind of set up for success before they go out with me. Just because my first experience wasn't like that. So my first lesson, I remember, I show up at the beach. I was on a date, and it was kind of like we were just thrown into the water, and we were out there for like an hour. It was a really choppy day that day that I went out. But I would say, I was in the water for at least half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of the 60. But I did love it. And it was enough to hook me. But and maybe that's why I loved it, because I loved falling down and climbing back up. But I really remembered that, and how some people might not like that. And I wanted to kind of set all my people up. So when I created a business several years afterwards, it was my goal and my focus to set everybody up for success, and that includes your land lesson before you get your water lesson, where you go over everything, and roots and board anatomy and water safety and the plan, and anyways, I'm really glad that you had a great first
Oh,
experience. It won't be your best.
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was perfect. Um, After that first experience, I know you mentioned it was a few years later that you actually decided to open your business. Well, how did you get to that point where you decided, this is something that I want to do full time?
Yeah, so I was working and I was experiencing burnout, and this was my hobby. This was something that I loved to do, and I saw other people doing it professionally, and that they were making a go of it, and enjoying, being on the water. It's seasonal where we are in Toronto, but there were other opportunities in the off season in other places. Um, so I just decided, no, I want to do this full time. And yeah, it built up quite quickly. Fortunately, I went to school for marketing and advertising and then public relations. So I had a background in that. So I think I had a little bit of an advantage versus other paddleboarding companies that I had that built in, I had that built into the house. And so I specialized in community partnerships, and one of those was with the Canadian Safe Boating Council. And through that, every year they do a media event on Victoria Day weekend for water safety in Canada. And I just called them up and I said, they do water safety demonstrations, and I called them up and I said, "Oh, do you need I think you need a paddleboard." I said, "I think you need a paddleboarder demonstration," and they said, "Yeah," and I got in, and yeah, I think I was quite pushy about it actually, and but I went and we had a great time, and I received a lot of media attention from that, and I became known as the paddleboard guy in Toronto. So with that, people are like, "Oh, we see you and your business on the news," and the authority just came. But that was in my first. That was in my first year. So I think back then there were about 16 different paddleboarding businesses in Toronto. Now there's about six. Um, but I became the number one ranked in Toronto by the end of my first year. And it was because of those community partnerships.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, most businesses fail their first year. So to really like rise to the top that way, especially in a market that was obviously very saturated like Toronto, that's pretty incredible. And this was 20 was this 2016?
2015,
2015.
2016. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this thriving
Yeah.
business then for 3 years. And then in 2018, everything really changes for you. So what happened to you in 2018?
So I'm teaching and everything's going great. And my season wrapped up at the end of the summer. And I actually went out to California because I'd met somebody. I specialized in excursions and evening events. I promoted, with various blogs and Toronto date ideas, etc., and sunsets in front of this Toronto skyline. And anyways, I found somebody who did something very similar in California, in Laguna Beach. And she said, well, why don't you come out here and see, we'll meet and connect, and maybe there's an opportunity for you to be out here in the off season. So I went out there and had a great trip, and we were planning some, I came back and I was making plans already, excursions down the Hoover Dam, and or down the Colorado River to the Hoover Dam, and setting up there with them. And I came back from that at the end of October, and in November it was like, when you're going so fast and so hard for so long, people think paddleboarding is really relaxing, and it is. Running paddleboarding is not. You're up at you know 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're on the water at 9, and you're off at sometimes 9, 10, and then you're dealing with takedown and answering all of the emails and the calls and the bookings and all of that. You're getting to bed at 1 a.m. So you're getting about 4 or 5 hours sleep for about 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
So I just worked I left because of burnout, but I walked into burnout. And I came back, and suddenly just the stress of all of that. It was like I came back from California and I could just breathe. And suddenly my chickenpox virus from when I was younger reactivated in my system. It lays dormant, and it can come back from extreme stress. And I was extremely stressed. It was just a constant state of being on the go and being on for so long that when I finally was relaxed, it just hit me. And it was called Ramsay Hunt syndrome. It's a neurological condition. And it caused many different things: hearing impairments, vision obstruction. I lost my mobility, and all the nerves in the right side of my face shattered. And it looked like I'd had a stroke. My mouth was kind of like this, and my face was sunken in. And yeah, it took medical professionals for saying that I wouldn't paddleboard again, or they didn't really know what was going to happen. So it was just a dealing with all of that. But what ended up happening was that it actually led me to, I ended up losing my business. I ended up losing my independence and my social life and my identity that I'd created. It was gone. And we look in the mirror, right? Like when we wake up, that's the first thing that we see is our reflection when we're brushing our teeth. And um and to not recognize your face and what that looks like, it was devastating. And I just shut down emotionally, and I eventually had a mental health breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, this event is you go from being this very active, business owner, you're on the water paddling every day, you're teaching other people how to be active, you're on TV paddleboarding. I mean, you really have built literally from nothing this very successful business. And of course, being physically active is a big part of it. So to go from that to this diagnosis where you lose your mobility, you need someone to like help you bathe, right? Like you had to move home
Hmm.
and close your business. I mean, I think the devastation of that it's hard to wrap your head around for someone who's never experienced it.
Yeah, I think what I can liken it to for most is grief.
Mm.
That's what it was. It was just if you've experienced the loss of a partner, of a loved one, of a job that you're very proud of, you know, a missed opportunity that you were so excited about. There's grief and all of that, right? So this was just compounded grief, and it led to um, depression, which led to a state of hopelessness.
This is something that I think, especially when we hear about a physical illness, we often don't think about the mental health impacts that can have. So, but in this situation, of course, you needed treatment for the physical side of things and rehab and everything. But also underneath all of this, as you're saying, there was this mental health breakdown happening. So this becomes your biggest turning point. Tell me, as you're experiencing some of the physical symptoms, what was going on for you mentally?
Yeah, no, I think, especially in the beginning, when anybody acquires their disability, people are born with disabilities, and then people acquire disabilities, and there's millions of people who live with disabilities, and there's millions in both categories. I think that those who acquire them later in life, um, they do also have this disadvantage of having to go through it all, go through that change, and and manage that and learn to deal with that. This was, a big, what's the word? A big importance was placed on my physical health recovery and physical training. You know, I was holding on to people to walk, and I would walk to practice. I would go to the physiotherapy place, and my job was to hold my cane in one hand and to hold the wall and to just try to make it to the end of the hall. Um, the mental health recovery wasn't as structured as that, and it didn't come until later, and it wasn't set up for success. And I think what men especially do, and this is, whatever, you know whatever ability you are, um, men struggle with communicating and sharing feelings and being vulnerable and expressing themselves. And I felt like I couldn't in many ways. And I, through my research since then, and through learning, some of my teachings, what I speak about now, that's not an uncommon thing that men struggle with that. It was just one of many. But yeah, no, I'd be at home, and I'd get the call, people checking, my parents checking in on me and saying, "How are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm fine." And because that's what we say, right? We say, how many times a day do you say I'm fine to somebody?
Yes.
Like, or I'm okay. Yeah. And usually we say that, um, one, because it saves us time. Yeah, we're all very busy people. I don't want to go into it. It's going to save me time if I just say, I'm fine, I'm good. Um, but to really go into that, like if I really went into how I'm doing, that could be a half-hour conversation. Do I want to talk about this for half an hour? Am I ready to do it? No. And I wasn't.
Fanshawe College has always offered a wide range of programs, and that now includes micro-credentials. So with these courses, you can earn digital badges to add to your social profiles. And there are so many to choose from, including diversity and inclusion for leaders, fostering employee engagement, even podcasting. Those are just a few of the options, and the best part is that they are all verified by Fanshawe College, a trusted institution that is a leader in part-time adult education. You can find out more about Fanshawe's micro-credentials at the link in the show notes. Yeah. And I mean, what you mentioned there, this societal issue, especially for men, not knowing how to speak up, and also this feeling of like, I can't, or I shouldn't, or like I'm displaying some kind of weakness if I do speak up. I mean, this is a big problem that as a society, we really need to deal with. And I know it's something that became part of, especially when you think about kids, I know is a big part of your campaign and your work is to really kind of shatter some of this stigma that exists around mental health. And from I feel so lucky that I got to see your documentary, When Hope Breaks Through. You mentioned your parents because and in the documentary, of course, we get to meet them. They seem so lovely, but they really showed up for you during this low point, right?
Yeah, no. I I was, I went into a mental health treatment facility to get mental health treatment, and that was it all came to a head, and I won't give too much of the story away, but I went in there because of an ultimatum that was given to me by my family out of love, um, that I needed to do this, and and I trusted them in that moment, and it was one of the scariest things to do. But no, my family, they, I think a large part, I felt very heavy and and I felt like I was a burden on them for a long time. And when I came out of that treatment facility, it took some time. Um, these are people who worked overtime in their jobs, and to support me and to help take care of me, and I decided that I didn't want to be here anymore, and yeah, so there was a lot to kind of come to terms with, and there was a lot to accept and to acknowledge, and for us all to kind of repair that. But no, we did it, and I will always be very grateful to my parents for what they've done.
You really experienced firsthand the cracks in the Canadian mental health care system. And during this time, you also became very aware of the challenges some of your friends' children were having around mental health as well. So tell me how that came together and sort of how you developed this purpose to raise awareness and funds to help children who were experiencing a mental illness.
Yeah. So, no, from my experience, I don't think I really, at the time, when that idea to help kids happened, that happened from conversation. A lot of my friends have kids. Um, and I was having conversations with them, and they tell you, what they're up to, and how's school going, and what their plans are for summer and Christmas and everything, and I don't think at that time I'd really connected my situation with the shortcomings of the Canadian mental health system. That hadn't happened yet. But what did happen was that conversations with these friends did happen, and they let me know how their kids were doing, and being, struggling at school, struggling in life, being, having anxiety, having stress, being depressed, and these are kids. And when I heard that, like, I just thought, how many other parents are there who have kids out there like this? Like, this isn't a one-off, and this isn't an isolated incident. This is what's happening out there. And this was just at the beginning of the pandemic. This was happening before the pandemic. But I think everything kind of came to the surface with that. You know, kids dealing with change, and not going to school, feeling isolated at home and withdrawn and separated, and all that. So I decided that I wanted to help, and it was so yeah. So it was born out of conversations with my friends.
So much happens in this year, really, after you have this mental health breakdown in 2019. You end up in a treatment facility. You're still going through the physical rehabilitation piece of it. You're still being told you might never have your independence, you might never get on a paddleboard again.
Mm.
So many things are happening, for like physically, mentally, emotionally, and then you know there's this breakthrough, right, where you do start to have some physical recovery. You get back on a paddleboard. I believe this happened in 2020. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes,
2020.
yes.
Okay, tell me about that moment where you got on a paddleboard for the first time after all of this.
Yeah, it was a really funny experience. That media safety, that Canadian media safety thing, they called, and they didn't know what happened to me, and and I didn't tell them, and and I thought, well, maybe it's just a good opportunity to go and to be near paddleboards, and it'll be a beautiful day, and maybe I'll just tell them that I'd like to bring somebody else and kind of pass the torch, and so I did. And when all the vans kind of cleared off and everybody went home, there were just three paddleboarders left with, and they, three paddleboarders, one recovering, still using a cane and wearing an eye patch, and there were two boards, and they said, "Do you want to try getting on a board for a few minutes?" And I thought, oh, I don't know. They said that I can do it. So, vertigo is a big part of my condition. So even getting on the water now, like, I have good days and bad days. Um, but but anyways, I did go on, and I sat down. I just sat on a board. I didn't stand. I didn't do anything fancy, but I just sat on it for a few minutes, and it made me very sick afterwards. But in that moment, it was a beautiful sunny day. I remember the sun hitting my face, and I felt like I was at home. Um, and and it was just very peaceful and beautiful. And I and yeah, so we just kept on incrementally using incremental wind building from then on. So 3 minutes turned into 5 minutes, turned into 7 minutes, turned into 9 minutes, turned into standing up for a minute, and then we started incrementally building that, and yeah.
And then fast forward to a year later, you decide that you want to become the first person with disabilities to cross all 5 Great Lakes on a paddleboard. So this is 2021, um, the first attempt, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, like, where did you get this idea from?
Well, there have been many people who've crossed Lake Ontario.
Okay.
So it actually only started with one
Okay.
crossing.
Okay.
So it was just the crossing of Lake Ontario. And Marilyn Bell has crossed it, and all these swimmers, and there've been there've been paddleboarder. Now there's been paddleboarders following me and whatnot. And anyways, I thought, I'd done a few events for the organization, for Jack.org, and then COVID hit, and I realized, well, we're not bringing out people because we're not doing events. So why don't we do an event centered around, like, build something like that people can view and watch and be a part of. So I thought, well, let's do a crossing, and I'll try, and that was built, and from that, the crossings of the Great Lakes in 2022 were built from that. So now I think I'm ready for an ocean.
Yeah. Why not? Why not, Mike?
I think you're coming with me.
I'm in. Oh my gosh, I'm in. I'll be there. I'll be
That's
in
so
the
much
support boat.
That's so much confidence.
I fully believe in you. I mean, after seeing everything you went through in the documentary, especially, it's just so inspiring. At the beginning of this interview, as you were talking about your first experience on a paddleboard, you kind of made a joke and said, I guess I like falling down and getting back up again. And, really, like, as we continue to talk about everything that's happened to you in the past 5 years, your story really is a story of falling and getting back up again. And I think this is another testament to that. I mean, that first crossing didn't go as planned. And I think most people would have just said, okay, like, it didn't work, I'm done. But you did not do that. You were like, okay, that didn't go as planned. So now I'm going to figure out how to do this better. And then I'm going to do it bigger and not just cross one Great Lake. I'm going to cross 5.
I know. We got a lot of media attention and a lot of coverage in that first crossing, and it was a crossing attempt. We didn't actually make it across. So when I came back and said that we were going to do 5, I think everybody was expecting me to come back and say we were going to try it again, try to cross one lake again, not 5 in one summer. I think there was a lot of okay. And it took some time to build that up, through a couple crossings for people to kind of jump on board and jump on board. And
I love a pun. Yes.
well, but even like, different media outlets and stuff. And, I had some apologies from a couple journalists saying, we'd love to, and we heard from you and we're sorry, we didn't. Yeah, but I think it took a little bit of time for them to realize that I was really serious about this and this is happening. So, but no, I had a great team of support. Boat captains and dietitians and nutritionists, and it was. I had a lot of people who really banded together to make that happen.
Yes, this is such an important point because, and I think in the documentary we really see this. This is not just you and a support boat on a paddleboard. I mean, you have meteorologists, you have nutritionists, you have the captains, you have, obviously there's this documentary team as well documenting everything that's happening. And we do also see the ups and downs because there were so many exciting moments, obviously finishing a crossing and, the exhilaration that comes with that. But there were also a lot of challenges. Let's talk about Lake Huron in particular, because I think we really feel the emotion of you and your team during this particular crossing.
Yeah, no, Lake Huron was it was the second crossing. The first one was Lake Erie, and that took about 8 hours. So it's kind of like how I compare it to, you know, figure skating or something. So, you start with your easy jump for warm up, and then you go into your hardest. And we had planned the two hardest ones back to back, second and third. Unfortunately, with weather, we had to switch that around. So it like Huron and Lake Michigan ended up becoming 2 and 4. But that wasn't how it was planned. But both of them were the same distance, essentially, were the same time, and it was going from a 7 8 hour crossing to a 28 hour 29 hour crossing,
Wow.
where you're on the water and you're off of it when you're done, and it was a physical and mental toll and mind game that you're playing with yourself and with nature and like the entire, all of the elements that are coming at you. All of these had different weather windows. However, when you're in the middle of a Great Lake, it can turn at any time, even if you're close to shore. So to be in the middle of it and have the weather, I think the weather changed 4 or 5 times while we were out there, from really hot to freezing to foggy to rain, to calm surfaces to really big waves, and yeah, no, there was a medical situation that we had to deal with on Lake Huron. That was a bit of a surprise. We'll leave that for the documentary, but no, uh, a very trying crossing, but it also gave me the confidence. Just like going into the mental health treatment facility, it gave me a lot of confidence on the other side, and then that confidence is just used for the next thing you do. So in that case, it was for the next crossing, and that gave me even more confidence, and it just kept on going.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. Speaking of confidence, one of my favorite scenes in the documentary is when you finish your last crossing, Lake Ontario, you arrive to Toronto, you have this like beautiful cheering crowd. Like, what was going through your mind in that moment?
So that was a 21-hour crossing. That was the first crossing that we actually started at night. We started that just before, I don't know, 5 p.m., just before, between 5 and 6 p.m. And we launched from the New York side. And yeah, no, that was just going across Lake Ontario, and it was very emotional, that crossing, because I was doing the one that we didn't get across the year before, and I was very aware of that throughout the entire thing. The weather was very good for the majority of it. In the end, that morning it switched at about, the sun came up at about 5. You start seeing it at about 4:35 out there, and then it comes up. So it was up about 5:30, but the weather switched about, I would say, 10, and I had to fight for the last 3 hours with wind coming at us, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna make me fight for this. Like, this is a lot. Like, so by the time that we got into the inner harbor, I was exhausted. So I remember being pulled out. I can remember most details. Some of it's a little bit, you know, I can remember it now because I've written everything down, and restored that. But for a long time, it was like a blur. It was like, you're coming on shore. There's all these people. There's the cameras. There's signs, there's the media, there's politicians, there's family, there's friends that you haven't seen in years. And then there's all these people. And I also was exhausted. So I've looked back at a couple of some of the news interviews from that day. And I was like, wow, I think God, like I got through that. That's like not sleeping for like 30 hours and doing, because you're awake before and then afterwards, but then to have to come out and communicate effectively. And I was like, whoa, okay, like good. Like we got down. I didn't say anything stupid today.
Mission accomplished in more ways than one.
Yeah. But with mental health, also, you're getting ashore, and you've got camera microphones being put in your face, and you're expected to say something, and mental health, and this is for a national organization. There are many involved, and it's a responsibility. So it's a weight that's on you to represent them, and to say, the things that represent them best and put them in the best light as well. So there's I'm just glad that we got through that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, so much to think about in that moment, along with like all of the emotions, of course.
Yeah.
And I guess I wonder now, we really took this journey through your life, from having this very successful paddleboarding business, to this devastating diagnosis and this breakdown that becomes your biggest turning point, and then this rise back up, and this new mission for you to go on this journey to raise awareness and funds for jack.org, which helps to manage mental health programming, in particular
Mhm.
for kids, and then to this documentary being released this year. So when you kind of reflect back on all of that, and at this point you're at right now, what do you want people to remember or to learn from your journey?
I think that, I think that those who watch the documentary will find that it's relatable, because I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular guy who went out and did a thing. A regular guy who struggles like everybody. And um, and that we all have challenges, and that if we can normalize that, and we can normalize talking about that, that's how stigma is broken. That's how stigma for mental health changes, by just kind of normalizing you know what we're going through, and talking about it, and being like, yeah, I'm not doing my best today, I'm not doing my best this month. Like it's but it's I saw something. Somebody. I wish that this was mine, but it's somebody else's. But I'm gonna put this out there. But I saw. Remember, if all you've got is 29% to give, and you're giving 29%, you're giving 100% of what you
I
have.
love that.
And I wish that was mine, but it's not.
But it's such a good reminder. Yes,
but
I love it.
but that's how it is. Nobody's operating on 100%, 100% of the time. Um, Everybody struggles. And if we can normalize that, then I think that we can actually, get somewhere.
Yes, I 100% agree with you.
But
But that is really perfect. And what a perfect message to leave us with today. Thank you so much, Mike. Where can people find you and kind of keep track of you in the documentary, and where they can see it?
yeah, so thank you. People can connect with me online. My website is mikeshoreman.com, and you can find me on all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. And no, we'll be releasing information on where people can connect with me, what events, what film festivals, etc. And I hope that everybody enjoys it.
Yes, absolutely. We'll link to your website in the show notes too. Thank you again, Mike, and all the best with the documentary as well as the year continues.
Thank you very much, Priya. Great talking.
Yes, you too. And thank you to all of you for watching and for listening. If you are loving Turning Point, which we hope you are, please leave us a 5-star review. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, you can find me at Priya Sam on Instagram. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.